with the Project Advantage podcast. Today, talking to Mike Maloney. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is different for me because I'm usually in your seat. Now I get to be, this is going to be difficult for me because I usually do most of the talking. Now I get to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone listening, Mike is Apprenticeship Director at the Associated Builders and Contractors, also Instructor Liaison at the Gould Construction Institute. We'll talk about the connection there in a minute. But as you said, also the co-host of the Associated Builders and Contractors Coffee Break podcast. So really excited to have you on today, Mike.
Yep, we're excited to be here, and I appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, it's very different being on this side of the microphone. So gives me a chance to relax, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, well, we'll see how relaxing. Hopefully, it's relaxing. We'll see. So, for everyone listening, just as an intro, could you tell us a little about Associated Builders and Contractors, and then also by extension, Gould Construction Institute?
Sure. So, my primary job is the instructor liaison for the Gould Construction Institute, and we are the education and training affiliate for the Associated Builders and Contractors of Massachusetts, which is the nationally, it's the largest open shop contractors trade association in the country. So ABC National has 67 chapters. Massachusetts is one of those chapters. Some chapters have multiple chapters. Some states combine, like ABC New Hampshire, Vermont has one chapter for those two states. And there's about 500 contractor members, some of the largest open shop contractors in the state. There's about over 70% are GCs, and there are some subs, there's some associated members, there's insurance companies, there's other types of people that help provide, things to the construction industry. Then on the school side, for the school, I'm the instructor liaison, which means I am responsible for about 100 teachers that teach for the Gould Construction Institute. 100 teachers. There's about 1,000 or more students. And then we got 10 locations around the state. So we go as far west as North Adams, Massachusetts. We're in Springfield. We go as far south as Martha's Vineyard. There's a sheet metal program we teach out on Martha's Vineyard. But we're in Taunton, Canton, Plymouth, Massachusetts, Woburn, Medford, Billerica, and Manchester, New Hampshire. So we try to hit as much of the state as we can.
All over the place. So you're on the road a lot then.
Yeah, I've never been to North Adams, thank goodness, because that's a long ride out there. But
that's a long hike from your area.
Yeah, Springfield's nice. we've got a lot of really very dedicated tradespeople that are tradespeople during the day. And that's how the trades are in Massachusetts. You typically work during the day, and then you teach at night, and the students work during the day, and they go to school at night. So some of these students are up at 4 or 5 in the morning. They're going to be at the job site at 6:30, and they work all day, and then they got to drive to a location and attend school. Every trade is different. Some trades are a 3-year, some are a 4-year, some are a 5-year program. So, for example, a sheet metal apprentice in Massachusetts has to go to school for 5 years, which is 750 hours, and has to work for 10,000 hours, which is 5 years. That's a long time. It's a long time.
So are most of the programs catered towards people coming up into the field, or they're also continuing education programs?
Yeah, it kind of depends. Some of the students, depending when they went to high school in Massachusetts, if they went to a vocational high school, that vocational high school might give that student credit towards their license. Some offer for 150, some offer 300. So, you don't start off from, step 1, I guess, or in level 1 class. You kind of can move up pretty quickly. But it's really about those work hours. So that the individual trade boards require so many hours. So even if you come out of school, you may get 150 hours of credit towards, say, electrical. That school might not give you any work hours. So you've got to still do the work hours.
So I somewhat recently had on the podcast the director of Explore the Trades, and we were talking about, how do we get more people into the trades? I'd be really interested, just from your vantage point, how is the velocity of people coming in? Is it still trending in the wrong direction? Is it trending back up to the right direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a lot of outreach here at the school and as a ABC chapter here, try to get out and spread the word about the trades. I think we're doing a pretty good job. It's really tough because you try to hit the high school students, and then some people's idea is maybe you go back further, middle school students. But I think the middle school students, they don't really know what they want to do. If you spend the time talking to them and meeting with them, by the time they get out of high school, they're not even going to remember who you are, right? They're not going to hold on to a pencil for 7 years that says it's the Gould. Just so you got to try to. I think it's important for us to get to the parents. As a parent of someone who just graduated high school, I was always screaming at home about taught them about the trades. You can get into the trades, and we tell us the students all the time. You can get into the trades and have very little to no college debt. I mean, for example, our school is much more affordable than a 4-year school at 40, 50, 60,000. You can go to school here or more, right? You can go to school with a Gould 4 years and 10,000, right? And then a lot of times the students that come to school here are already working in the field, right? So they're going to school and making money instead of just going to school. So once you get that license, you can make 50, 60, 80. Some of these licensed pipe fitters are making over $100 an hour. So if you get out of school at 18 and you put 4 years into your pipe fit and you're 22 years old, making 100,000, take that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, and you hear so much too about, students with the student loans, and then they decide to go do something else because they picked the wrong career. And I mean, even I know multiple multiple people who went to college who then later on were like, actually, I want to go into construction.
Yep.
And then you've spent the time, and the money instead of taking that earlier step. I think the parents is a really interesting angle.
Well, I know when I was in high school, I, my father was a electrician, and I never even thought about going to the trades because when I was in high school, you went to the trades if you couldn't go into college, and the tradespeople didn't make a lot of money, right? They just didn't educate. My parents didn't educate me. The school, is very college. Go to college. You can go to high school. If you went to the trade school, you were kind of a burnout, right? You weren't going to go anywhere. But it's almost kind of now where the trade schools now there's a waiting list to get in. That the programs are so popular, I guess, and it's not just carpentry and plumbing at the trade schools. There's cybersecurity, there's cosmetology, there's auto body, there's auto repair. I mean, my youngest son tried to go to a local technical school and there was a waiting list. He just couldn't get in, so you could very easily get in high school. And he was like, maybe I don't want to go to college. Maybe I want to pick up a trade and learn something. I don't want to be a, because my middle son went to college here in Boston. He saw the college debt. He's going to have 60,000 a year at 4 years is crazy. He'll take you forever to pay it off. So go to the trades, right, for a fraction, and then you're working and making money at the same time.
Well, I've seen some of the visual graphics where it's talking about how, well, unless you become a neurosurgeon, all that money that you would have put towards, the college and then any continuing education afterwards, like the amount of time it takes you to catch up with the loans is outstandingly long.
And for what we're seeing on our side is, a couple of years ago, 300 or 400 students was a lot of students here, but we've seen it grow now to the point where we turn a lot of students away because I just don't have the teachers, right? So, we probably turn 100 students away a year because the classes fill up so quick. We start registrations in June. By July 1st, some classes are full, right? We have to close the classes. And I just don't have enough teachers. I mean, for example, today I just had a teacher quit on me this morning. So it's like, what do I do with this 20 something students? I don't know what to do with them. I'm gonna either have to refund their money. That's again, it's just there's a teacher shortage, not only in the public schools, but the trade schools. And if anybody's done any work at their house, to try to find a good contractor, to find someone that can go there. They're so busy with all the work that you may get a contract to take 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, 4 months to go to your house to fix something. I can't find good teachers. So we're always looking, we've got referral programs, we're talking ABC Massachusetts members. We're talking to, just students in general, former teachers. Sometimes I reach out 4 or 5 years from teachers 4 or 5 years ago and say, would you come back? Sometimes they say yes. Sometimes they say no. Sometimes they say I'm too busy here. I'm very retired, or I'm living in Florida, or, and for the most part, Massachusetts, most of the trade classes have to be taught in person, right? And that's why they're in the trades. They want to use their hands. They don't want to be sitting on a computer. But again, just because I don't have a lot of teachers, the virtual classes help because I can have a teacher in Athol, Massachusetts, teaching a class to everybody across the state. In fact, I've got one female student that's in the Army. He's stationed in Alaska. He's, he's taking classes online to help towards his license.
So what, just in case anyone's listening who, is hearing us talk about this and is thinking, well, I'd love to teach and love to, I'm towards the end of my career maybe, or want to make that next shift. Uh, what does that look like for someone?
Yeah, so to be a teacher of the trades in Massachusetts, you have to be licensed in that trade. So if you want to teach an electrical class, you have to be a licensed electrical journey person. There's only one trade that requires an instructor license, and that's sheet metal. Some trades like plumbing, you have to have your master plumber's license in order to teach in Massachusetts. And most of the other trades are pretty much just having your journeyman's license. So there's no age requirement, for the most part. I have a lot of teachers that were former students. I'd say 8 or 10 of them are probably former students of the Gould, which is great because then they can really relate to those students. But so we're always looking for teachers. We're always, I'm sure that, you can throw my contact information out there, but, if you, yeah.
Of course, absolutely, and we certainly will. Now, on the ABC side, so Associated Builders and Contractors, so huge organization. I mean, anyone listening anywhere across the country is probably familiar. How many members nationwide are we at?
I don't even know nationwide. I think it's in the tens of thousands. Some states, it all kind of depends on the state. Some states have thousands of members, some have 300 members. So it's kind of all depends on but the best part of ABC, a nationalization, is they do a lot of government advocacy. There's a ton of networking. There's a ton of, events you can attend. And again, every chapter does something different. So in Massachusetts, we have a golf tournament every year. We have, Meet the Generals event where we put 20 general contractors in a room and any member can come and meet them. So if you're looking to get a job, bid a job, help with a job, maybe you're a smaller company, you want to grow, or you're a bigger company, you want to, hire different types of companies do different work on your job site, you can join ABC Massachusetts. But there's other benefits, like there's insurance companies, there's self-insured groups, there's help with workers' comp, there's lawyers, there's different benefits companies you can go to. There's, associate members. There's, graphic design companies. It runs the gamut of all sorts of great companies that can help your construction business grow. And what we tell people, it's not like a gym membership, right? So you pay the membership to be an ABC, but if you don't go to an event, you don't meet anybody, right? We're hoping that you come to one event, get one job, to pay your dues, right? Pays your member dues for the year. If you're an ABC Massachusetts member and you send students to the Gould, you save yourself about $400 a student. So if you have 5 students, let's say, at $400 a piece, that pretty much pays your dues right there, which is pretty awesome.
I think one of the problems that we see on our end, more from the manufacturer supplier side, is teams want to start projects and sometimes they're waiting on a customer. Happens a lot. But sometimes they're waiting because they don't have the crew. They don't have enough people ready to go. And it's definitely a pain point.
That's in part, some of the members here too. There's staffing agencies, and they're construction based staffing agencies. So if you had a job and you needed, you don't need a carpenter for more than a couple of weeks, let's say, you can reach out to the staffing agency, temporarily hire this carpenter to come on the job and do your work for you for a couple of weeks. And then when you don't need him, he goes back to the pool, whatever, and they'll send him someplace else, which is so helpful for so many companies, especially if you're growing. We have a lot of smaller companies, lots of big companies. It's one time start out small. Some of the ABC Massachusetts members been here for 30, 40, 50 years, some of these companies. And, it becomes like a family. It becomes like every event you see some great people. So the podcast has allowed me to do some amazing, interviews with some amazing people, both nationally and locally to Massachusetts.
So I saw something recently I wanted to ask you about. So in Rhode Island, was reading about a contractor. I won't tell you the type of contractor, just to keep it from targeting them too much on it. But they were at the end of their career, and they decided to transition to new ownership. And from the sounds of it, the goal is eventually they'll try to find a couple others in the local vicinity and bring them together to try to build some economies of scale on the team. I think a lot of it has to do with that, we can't get enough people on the crews to work on the projects. let's just get bigger to be able to do it. Is then on the other side, there's of course, we work with people all the time who they're 1 to 3, 5 person shops, and they're going out, they're doing a project, finish it, move on to the next, move on, move on, move on. Uh, do you see, is there a trend of consolidation within the trades of these smaller groups? I mean, we've seen it certainly with a lot of the distributors where it's really, I don't want to say gotten bad, but there's only a handful of entities that own a lot of the distributors now, and you could have 20 brands under one big entity. Uh, so yeah, interested where you've seen.
We've seen a lot of that, especially I call them second generation companies where, mom and dad originally started the company, and then, the sons or the daughters pick up from the parents. And then now that second generation is ready to retire. They've done this for so long. They've been doing it since they were little kids. And then that second generation, the third generation doesn't want any part of it. They don't, they saw how hard mom and dad worked. They saw the long days. They saw the stress they were in, and they don't want to take over the business. So mom and dad end up selling out to somebody else, whether it be a local company here in Masters, or sometimes it's a bigger company outside of Mass. It's somebody from Florida or Texas or Alabama, and then you kind of take that mom and pop size business, right? And it's great to be a mom and pop business, but now you sell it to a corporate place, and now you kind of lose that small company feel. And now you're dealing with, corporate policies and corporate procedures instead of, you know, employees and even customers can't just go to the office, knock on the door, and talk to the president of the company anymore because that president's in Texas or Alabama or Florida or Mississippi. I mean, I've seen that a lot on the retail side from my previous time. I worked for a lot of Dunkin' Donuts franchisees, and they're second gen or some even third gen, and the fourth gen doesn't want to do it. They don't want to be in the stores. They don't want to be going to the bank with money. They don't want to be going to inspections and mopping floors and making donuts. And it's just easier to get out at that point. They took the very small company that maybe their grandpa built or started, and it was grandpa and one or two people. Now it's 20, 30 people. Now they get bought up by a bigger nationwide company. Now it's 1,000 people, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, and there's good and bad in it too, right? I mean, in the example that I had mentioned, if I recall correctly, there were some people on the team that were really excited. Some of the younger people on the crews were really excited about, like, oh, here's some new, the possibility for us to do things maybe differently.
Right.
Again, have been being done.
Yep.
Then on the other side, you might have someone on the team who says, well, great. Well, I've been at this for 25 years and now you're going to come in and tell me how to do my job.
Correct.
And it's tough because the person who's been doing it for 25 years, they're probably pretty good at their job.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And then, like I said, from what I've seen, I know that sometimes when the bigger company takes over the smaller company, that president of the company stays on for a little while to kind of help with the transition. And then, after a couple of years, they want to retire, especially companies have been doing it for 25 or 30 years, and their parents did it for 30 years before them. They just want to retire now, and they just want to enjoy the wealth that they've built, or the business that they've built, or the life that they've built. God bless them, I guess. But we're seeing, like I said, a lot of the smaller companies being bought up by the bigger guys, and the bigger guys. Sometimes the bigger guys, they keep it for a little while and then sell it off to somebody else. Which makes it difficult for the employees as well.
Yeah, it's a lot bouncing around. I mean, I think one of the things that I would encourage someone to consider is, if you're at one of these companies and you have the sense that it's getting towards end of the career for the owners, even think about, I mean, what's the downside of talking to them, be like, hey, if you ever decide you want to start transitioning for some reason, I mean, it's a delicate conversation, right? If you can figure out how to have that conversation, I mean, you could be the person to take over.
And I tell students that too. We're visiting classes, and I tell students, I usually say to them, who wants to be a teacher one day? And nobody ever raises their hands, right? Because they're still learning. But I say, you may not now, but never stop getting those licenses, right? So don't just stop with your journeyman license. Get your master, because there's a lot of companies those master pipe fitters, those master electricians, those master plumbers are aging out, and they're going to retire. Those companies need someone to take that master plumber license. So if you've got that license, you've got that one license, two license, whatever licenses you got, that all makes you look better. And when somebody retires, you could say, listen, I got my master, and the company needs that master for permitting or licensure or what bidding a job. That's the way to do it. And then
Yeah,
that's it.
let me give me a shot. Let me
Yep.
jump into more of the leadership role,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it can be huge. And the young people too, I think, you know, especially with technology, the world's changing so fast where, there could be a way of doing business, whereas, where the electrical part of, okay, let's install some lights or let's install fans or HVAC is probably going to stay pretty similar 10 years from now. But how we interact with the customers, how we find customers, how we operate the business internally is probably going to evolve. And those people who are going through your programs or similar programs right now, I mean, they're the ones who were born with an iPhone in their hands.
Yeah. And that's, again, when we talked about it before, was, you know, some teachers nowadays just want to read out of the book. And so many students, they come from a video game life, right? They've always been playing video games. So that we have to go that route. We have a lot of simulators at the school. We've got a welding simulator, which is like a VR headset they can put on, and they hold the welding sticks, and everything's done through the VR headset, which is pretty amazing. But there's a ton of different simulators. There's a ton of online stuff they can do. So to try to get the teachers to understand that it's not just, in the old days, all they cared about was make sure you're in that seat for 150 hours. And they teach the theory, 150 hours of theory, and then you take that theory and you apply it on the job, right? So you work under a journeyman somewhere, and that journeyman's kind of taking what you built in the theory and showing you more, in the in the on the job. And it's been a very, I would say, some teachers really get it. And again, some teachers are 100%, 90% of the time they're skilled tradespeople. They're working in the field, they're climbing ladders, they're pulling wire, and they got to flip that switch in the afternoon on the way from the job site to the school. Now they got to be a teacher, and they got to be able to speak and answer questions and keep the class engaged. That's a whole nother set of skills. Some teachers do great at it, and some teachers have to work at that. It's not easy. It's just,
It's a very different
yeah.
workplace environment.
And it's funny when I talk to someone, I'll say, "You want to be a teacher?" And they're like, "No, I can't be a teacher." But most journeymen are teaching apprentices on the job site anyways. They're just not in a formal classroom setting. So I tell them, if you've got a couple of apprentices on the job site that you keep interacting and engaging with, you can do it in a classroom. It's no, the most important thing is the students really want, the students love when the teacher says to them, "What did you do today at work?" And you kind of start your class that way, right? And they say, "Oh, they show some pictures." I've got some teachers that are like wiring inspectors for certain cities. So those inspectors have a lot of pictures of some really messed up stuff out there, some
Some
really
good
good
war
stuff.
stories.
Yeah. And the students, they don't really want to read from the book. They want to just hear about the stories from the teacher, like what they saw, what they did, show some pictures, you know, do a virtual reality type of thing, do a simulator. Like we've got an excavation simulator that we bring to different college fairs and stuff to show people. And the fact that a student can jump in there and just use those, we bring a big TV and they're using the same hand controls that an excavator would use. And I'll tell the students, if you're good at this, there are companies that pay you over $100 an hour just to sit in a dump truck and load a dump truck, or sit in an excavator and put dirt from pile A into the back of a dump truck. And they're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah." And no college, you can go make over $100 an hour. And if you want to work 50, 60 hours a week, you make yourself some really good money, and you don't have that college debt. You get on with a company that's going to pay for you to be there, pay you 30, 40, 50, $60 an hour till you get your license. And it's going to be different. It's going to be, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the key is there's just such an opportunity for people, regardless if you're interested in electrical, you think, or HVAC, or or more general construction, or let's get down, in the dirt and excavating, and there's so many opportunities throughout. I mean, I think the other area that becomes really interesting too is, so okay, I'm in it, I go through a program like yours, I jump into it, I get to the point working under someone else. I'm like, okay, I want to go off and do it on my own now. I know enough. Whether or not you do or not at that point, I think I know enough. I'm ready to go. I mean, what would you suggest from what you've seen? Because you've seen so many students, and with ABC, you see a lot of what's going on in the industry. I mean, what are those business growth strategies that seem to keep popping up their heads? Like, how does someone make that jump?
In Massachusetts, it's really strange because most companies, you can't hire a bunch of apprentices and not have the right number of journeymen to watch over them. So this thing's called ratios in Massachusetts, and the ratios are really based on an outdated idea, right? Way back in the day, the ratios were set up and they're not adequate enough. So if you were a pipe fitting company, you had a couple of real big jobs coming up, and you only have a couple of pipe fitters, licensed pipe fitters, you can't bring on a bunch of apprentices, and because you're breaking the law, because you can only have, it's one apprentice for 5 journeymen, let's say, or one apprentice for 3 journeymen. So if you've got 6 journeymen, you can only have 3 apprentices, but you may need more because you've got a lot of work to do. And the state really needs to take a solid look at the ratios piece, and you're hurting a lot of companies by not letting them have more. And I know it's tied to safety. We want to talk about the safety side. I get it. You can't have 10 apprentices running around the job site and have no journeyman keeping an eye on them, right? Because who's watching the apprentices make sure they're welding things correctly or hanging things correctly or putting things together correctly? But there's got to be a better way to adjust some of the ratios per the job site, or help.
And I have to think that issue is present in other states as well. So probably some less than others.
Oh yeah. Yep. And it's funny, Massachusetts is one of those states that we don't do anything like the states around us. We do something totally separate. We run through all the time with the apprentice program. The way our state apprentice standards is set up, it's run by the state. A lot of states around us are all federally controlled. So, run by the Department of Labor on the federal side, where on the state wants that program, the state's running it, the state wants that money rather than the federal people want it. So that's another, if you're an ABC member and you're working with someone in New York and you want to start doing stuff in Massachusetts, the rules are totally different. The ratios are different. The school doesn't set the ratio, the state sets the ratio. So it's a lot of bureaucratic red tape you got to get through to get those jobs and get those people working.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had started to mention a little about, safety. I mean, I think in our business in particular, with lighting, safety is at the core of it. I mean, often the electricians are working with us to determine, okay, well, how do we get the right light level so that this facility that has had an OSHA violation or some sort of problem can remedy and make sure that people can work safely in the facility. Um, so there's that component where, let's make the end users safe. But I think, for the industry in the trades, it's also how do we make sure all the tradespeople are safe?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that as far as the safety side of the construction world has come a long way. I know that, on the ABC side, there are a lot of safety companies that are ABC Massachusetts members. So if a member had a question about something, whether it be an OSHA question or just a general safety question, but even training wise, if you had a bunch of employees that wanted to go through some first aid CPR training, or silica training, or some type of safety training, we can arrange for all that here at the school, which again, save yourself some money if you're a member. But if you've got people that need to be trained on anything, if you said I want to know about forklift training or hoist training or distracted driving training or like mental health awareness, we do a lot of that as well here to keep people safe, because we want not just the students to go to work during the day and come home at night, but we want the members as well to be able to run out a safe work site. Very proud of that. They're very, most companies are very proud of their safety history, which is pretty awesome.
Well, in Massachusetts, what do you see as sort of the top safety issue that people seem to run into that may be worth, if I haven't received specialized training on it, might be worth thinking about?
Yeah, probably that hoist, a lot of the scissor lift and hoist training, we can do all that as well. I think someone thinks they can just go rent one of these pieces of equipment and go 30, 40 feet in the air and try to fix something on their building. And if someone falls or gets hurt, if you're not, or even like a roofing, make sure you're secured to the roof.
Sounds like my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, me too. Right. I don't need this. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I know how many years I climbed a 10-foot ladder to hang Christmas lights on a 14-foot over, eve of a house. I was,
It's not that bad. You could be okay. No problem.
It's a 10-foot fall. The bushes I said the bushes will break my fall if I fell off the ladder hanging Christmas lights.
Right. So will the rock under the bushes.
Yeah. I've fallen a couple times and caught myself, but Yeah, well, Clark Griswold, a Christmas Vacation, hanging out like the gutter as I'm trying to staple in Christmas
Exactly.
lights. Yeah,
Yeah, Instagram's full of now all these electrical memes that I get about just that they're holding out the rod to try to
yeah.
you know turn off the power, and and it's a metal rod, and
Or they got like one power strip that's got 70 things in it, right? Like,
yeah.
why did my house burn down? Well, you probably should have 30 things plugged into your power strip. Yeah. I mean, safety wise, I think ABC member companies come a long way just because there's so much opportunity. They give out safety awards here. They give out awards for different projects that are done by ABC Massachusetts members. There's a step into safety day. There's a excellence in construction awards that they give out all sorts of awards for these projects. It's all based on safety, but budget and overall score of a project. And you can see some of them hanging on the back on there. But a lot of projects, a lot of great projects, beautiful buildings, and as companies are very proud of how safe they are while they build those buildings.
Mike, one area also, that we think about a lot, and we've sort of trained our team to talk about is, you know, with contractors, is what you should be expecting and helping them to make sure they know the questions they should even be asking of companies like us. Uh, does training go into that sort of thing where, I guess for an apprentice, they may not be at the point where they're really making any sort of, sourcing decision on behalf of the senior members of the team or on behalf of the GC. But what one of the areas, it's unfortunate when it happens, but we see is that someone will send in a junior person to come procure, and
Hmm.
they'll come to us. We'll work through the project with them. A lot of the questions get asked, and we get a call 3 months later that something's not working right. 95% of the time, it's that somewhere along the course of communications, someone on the team did not realize the voltage of the project. And, I think just from an educational standpoint, I mean, there's so much in education. I think one of the areas that, at least based on the data of what we see when projects come back, and we'll always support teams. We know things happen, and we always are there to try to work through it with them. But I almost feel like uh, on owners and on senior members of the team helping to educate the person you're going to send to do your dirty work of ordering and procuring. You gotta help them with it.
Yeah, that's why so many people need employees, right? So I get it all the time. I need employees. Okay, cool. I may have a couple of apprentices looking for a job, and they're like, "Well, no, I don't want a green person. I want someone with some experience." And they want the experienced person because they don't want to put the time into training them. And good companies understand the importance of training. And I've been training for such a long time now that training is a very hard thing to sell a company because it's not like buying a new truck or a new forklift or a new piece of equipment that you can put your hands on and touch, right? Training is something that you really have to invest in your people. So whether it be a junior estimator or a junior project manager or whatever, making sure that they're teamed up with someone that really knows the insides and outs and has a training plan for that person. Like, you're going to spend so many days with this person, so many days with this person. You're going to spend so many hours with this person because, like you said, if you don't train the person, and I've been victim of that as well. I need a teacher for tomorrow night. What do I do? I had somebody quit. I'm just gonna pull someone off the street and say you're a teacher now, and I know that person is not going to make it. With no training, companies really have to realize that sometimes it's better to take someone new with no history and no experience that you can train your company's way. Rather than taking Mike Maloney with 30 years experience working with somebody that maybe wasn't doing it right, and then I show up on the job and I know everything. I don't need anybody to show me anything, but maybe your company does something a little bit different than where I came from. So take someone totally green apprentice, and then you build them up as they go. So when they get their license, they feel a little bit of loyalty to you. I know some companies are very nervous about that because a lot of this generation doesn't stay loyal. They leave a company for a quarter an hour raise or a 50 cent an hour raise instead of realizing, man, if I just stayed with this company, I'd have my license. Maybe I'd be 10 years, I'll be vice president, 50 years I'm the president, 20 years I'm the owner, right? They can't see that far down the road, but lot of companies need people, and they're very, very skeptical about hiring someone who's totally green. They'd rather hire someone with some experience. So
Yeah, and that's really where organization like Gould comes in, where the person says, "Well, listen, I might be green, but I'm putting in the time, putting in the work to make sure I can contribute and contribute the right way too."
and I think for the most part, most of our students, I would say 95 to 97% of our students, you know, their education is being paid for by their company they work for, and they're working in the field, so but I mean, we have some students that are, like maybe they work at Target and they're trying to make a career change or set themselves up for the future. So they come to the Gould to get those school hours, but they really need that on the job training. So to find a company that'll, again, hire them. And what I tell people is, go to school for a year or two. If you don't find anything, let's let's reconnect and try to find someplace. Because a lot of companies will say, well, geez, I know you don't have the on the job experience, but you paid for yourself to go to school for 2 or 3 years. That's some dedication. Right? That's some serious saving money and serious dedication. Let's give that person a chance. And I've seen that's always a good feeling for us, because when it takes someone who's not working and puts them with a member, it's a good thing.
Mike, do you see any scholarship opportunities out there? You know, money can be so tight in many of these cases, particularly if, I'm trying to make a switch from I'm working a cashier position. I want to make that switch into the trades. Where can prospective students look for that sort of financial support?
That's a fantastic question, because we just talked about this over the past couple weeks for our student orientation. Is ABC Massachusetts actually has a Build Your Future scholarship that they can apply for. They can go on the abcma.org website, click on Build Your Future Scholarship. It's a quick application process. You just enter some questions. I think you got to write a couple of, maybe answer some essay questions, which may be difficult for people. But if anybody listening wants to apply for that, anybody here on the staff will help you answer those questions, or how to, maybe don't know how to type, you don't have a computer at home, we can help you with that. And then I think a couple references, and then I think that's pretty much it. Maybe there's a quick little interview. And for those people that are self-pay students and need some help paying the tuition, I mean, it's $1,500 to $2,000. They're going to pay for your tuition, which is, 3/4 of the way for the school year, which is great. I mean, there are other scholarships and grants out there, but the big one for us is that ABC Mass Builds Your Future scholarship.
And I assume through other ABC chapters, there'll be a local educational affiliate that, hopefully has access to some similar financial support as well.
Again, most of the students are, their education is paid for by the employer. And every employer does something different. Some pay for it 100%, some make the student pay, and then the company pays them back, reimburse them when they're done. Some do 50/50, some companies pay and then take it out of your paycheck. Because we understand it's for $2,500, $2,600, and everybody has that. And to be able to help them out, apply for the scholarship. But again, some companies understand the importance of training and know that the investment they're putting in these people. Some companies make their students sign something that says, you're gonna, even that, work, they're gonna pay for your 4-year education, but then you're gonna work for them for 2 years, or you're gonna pay them back. So they try to get the most out of the apprentices, because a lot of apprentices get that license and then they immediately start jumping. They jump. Oh, you're gonna pay me $1 more? You're gonna pay me 40 cents more? I'm out and gone. So that, a lot of people jump. And I see on the apprenticeship side, I see one apprentice will go to 4 different pipe fitting companies, because you're chasing that dollar, $2, $3 an hour, $5 an hour. Um, you know, and I understand, I'd leave a job for $5 an hour for 40 hours. That's good money. It's really good money.
Yeah, and definitely worth, the worst thing you could do is miss that your current employer would have also given it to you, and you didn't need to go through the whole effort of making the switch. And you go and tell them you're leaving and say, "Well, I would have given you the raise, but you got to ask for it."
And again, some of these parents are so young, they don't understand that's part of the game, I guess, right? Especially with, and I tell people, you got to get that license. Just get that license. Get your license. Get that little piece of paper that says you're a licensed plumber or a licensed electrician. Then you can go where you can do what you want. You can work for yourself if you want. You want to work for a company X and work part time doing side jobs. I mean, I wish I had done that myself, because I would have been, money wise, just killing it. Some of these guys make really good money, even teaching. And I always tell people, when I come back to teach for us, you're not gonna buy a Taj Mahal, but for $10,000 or $12,000 a year just to teach. Some of the teachers put that money aside and take their family on vacation, or buy their car, or pay for the college. Some of these guys, they just make that extra money to help pay for their college education for their kids. It all adds up. And I try to tell people that. So when students say, I don't want to be a teacher, and I get 3 or 4 years later, someone says, hey, remember me? I want to be a teacher. I got a kid on the way. I don't want to work all this overtime. I don't want to be pulling wires over my head. My body's falling apart. Or, someone says, I'm retiring soon, and I want to give back to the trades. I want to give the next generation my knowledge. That's what we really like.
Well, Mike, this has been great. I mean, I guess the last thing I just want to mention for everyone listening, particularly if someone who's a member of an ABC chapter, even outside the Massachusetts area, is that you co-host the only ABC chapter podcast that you were saying you think in the entire United States, correct?
Yeah. So it started as a coffee break podcast back in 2021. It's kind of morphed over time. It's now called the Build Zone podcast. After speaking with some consultant, and he said that coffee break doesn't have much to do with construction. So they said, if they did a search for construction themed podcast, the coffee break wouldn't come up. So we changed it to the Build Zone. Yeah, I'm very proud to say we're the only chapter in the country with a weekly produced and edited podcast. And it's all about construction trends. I've had about 185 guests come on. I've had some people come on multiple times. It's allowed me to meet a lot of great ABC Masters members and members from other chapters as well. I've had national ABC people come on and talk. I've had non-members come on and talk. Like if I see someone that's just, I think would be an interesting guest or has an interesting product, or I'm really big into like company culture people. So like how to build the best company culture, have experts come on and talk about that. And it's 20 to 25 minutes. We just get down to the nitty gritty and talk 20, 25 minutes. And it's been fantastic. We're up to 185 episodes. 100 episodes is a milestone. We celebrated pretty hard for that 100 episodes. And I think for the 200, we're just going to keep going. We've built a little empire here, and we're going to keep it going.
I like that. Well, we're going to have to put in for our 100th episode celebratory budget here. That's a great idea.
Yeah, my budget was about $3. I had some cracker things like popped open and then shot confetti, and I bought some. And a lot of times I take the video and put it on YouTube. We also have a YouTube channel called the Build Zone Podcast, and there's actually part of I call it a hype video, 100th episode. You can see us, me and the other people on the podcast had 100 balloons that said 100, and I had streamers, and it was pretty awesome. I love it. It's kind of just a little hobby of mine, editing it. So I do everything myself. I book the guests, I do the editing, I do the guest interviews, I do all the graphics. Everything on LinkedIn is all me.
In topic span, construction, everything.
Yeah, I mean, I've had, we typically talk about, industry experts, right? We have construction industry experts. We do some chapter news. We talk a lot about what's going on in the chapter, upcoming events. We talk a little bit about workforce development because we've got some workforce development things going on here at the chapter. And then again, like you said, business trends. What do we see going on in the world of construction? And again, when the guest comes on, it kind of allows them to talk about themselves, which they probably would never get a chance to ever do. It's a little commercial for themselves, talk about upcoming projects. They can do employee shout outs. I've had a lot of like women-owned companies. Like I had a woman come on. It's a female-owned, woman-owned PPE company. They're making women PPE, which I had learned a lot about because you just think PPE is one size fits all, but it isn't. So women don't want to wear a men's large vest. They want to wear something that maybe looks better on them, fits their body a little bit better. So that was fantastic. I've had a lot of company culture stuff, talk about building a strong company culture. I had a lot of software people come on too, like different software companies from around the country. We have a great relationship with the folks up at Smart Build up in Canada. They've been on several times. We were actually picked by Smart Build. They had a brand new product come out. They rolled out at the national convention in February, and they actually picked us to actually do the announcement and do the rollout. So they created some PPE that fits in their hard hat, and there's sensors in the hard hat and speakers and microphones in the hard hat. So instead of getting on your phone and typing things into your phone for work orders and work changes, you just say it into your hard hat. Hard hat listens to it. It's checking your sweat, it checks your heart rate, it checks crazy type of software like that. And I've known the owner of the company for a couple of years now. He was on when the podcast was brand new, and he's like, podcast has been there with me since the beginning. I want you guys to roll it out. So we went to Vegas in February with the national convention, and video of them talking about the product and rolled it out. And,
That's great.
it's awesome.
That's great.
That's great.
We'll definitely include a link to not only Associated Builders and Contractors, Gould for those who might be, interested in starting to explore the educational component and the podcast as well.
Check us out, the Build Zone podcast. Wherever you find podcasts, we're on Spotify, Apple Music. I'm on my list right now. iHeartRadio, Listen Notes, Amazon Music, Audible, Pocket Cast, Blueberry. Most of which I've never even heard of before, but like I said, wherever you can find podcasts.
Fantastic. Great. Well, Mike, thanks for joining us today, and keep it going on your end. Thank you for the hard work.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it, and appreciate all the work you guys are doing.